Hello. Hi, Monica.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Maybe, okay, we have to wait the other people coming.
Yes, yes, they're still not here. Thank you so much for organizing this event. I'm really happy.
For me, it was a pleasure, and we have to thank also, Luigi Maria Sicca and Davide Bisiak that are committed with the .org network. So maybe Davide is here, I think. Davide? Sì, eccolo. Ah, c'è anche Luigi Maria. Luigi Maria, hi there.
Thank you very much indeed. This is absolutely lovely.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you.
I love this network. There seems to be so much going on, and it's such good news. I mean, almost everything I see that you do is good news, is something that I would like to take part in and would like to share with others. So, yeah.
Our pleasure.
And the journal, of course, too. The journal and the special issues. And
yeah. I'm going to mention the special issue when I will introduce this webinar. So you have a deadline. I remember.
I don't remember because we've been talking about this a bit here and
forth. Of organizing. The deadline is 15th of September 2022. So.
Yeah.
1 year from now.
A bit in the future, and so there's still time left.
Yeah.
But the invitation to join the board, it was also something like, I mean, these days, such nice things don't happen every day. So thank you again for inviting me to join the board to the journal.
Hi, Luca.
Hi.
Monica, you know that Jenny Holt will be here because.
Yeah, she said she'd be here, but I don't think she will come before 17.
Okay. Because this morning she wasn't with us.
She couldn't.
Okay.
But I don't think she will come before 17.
Okay. Because this morning she wasn't with us.
She couldn't.
Okay.
There seems to be some kind of echo in the system.
Yeah, it was me. I just tried.
Okay. Technical.
Facebook Live.
Things. Yeah. It did feel a bit weird.
Yeah.
Where are you guys? Are you all in Rome?
Luca is in Rome. I don't. Yes. Maybe now are you in Rome or
no? At the moment I'm in Bologna.
Okay.
I was supposed to go there tomorrow, but I just received the news that the school of my son is closed due to a positive case in his classroom. So we start again with quarantine.
Oh.
So Luca is in Bologna. I am in Palermo.
Palermo.
Yeah.
I love Palermo. Bologna is really lovely too, by the way.
Thank you.
Italy is all beautiful, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And Luigi Maria and Davide are in Naples, so, so also Naples is beautiful, I think.
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm in Warsaw.
Mhm.
How's the weather?
It's
Good.
awful. It's cold and gray, and it's really cold. But it's going to get better tomorrow.
Good.
Yeah, I'm from Helsinki, and today the maximum was 7 degrees.
Wow. Now we are
Well,
still
it was a bit better here. The maximum was 12.
okay. No, we are still toward 25, 26 degrees today.
Oh.
So.
The same here in Sicily. Maybe
Life is good where you are. It's good.
Indeed. So I wanted to thank you, Monica, for the opportunity of reviewing this book, which is not simple, but I really loved reading it, and I think I will enjoy it, rereading it again in the next days or weeks. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
well,
Yeah.
very rich and sometimes complex book. Also, you know, different contribution from different disciplines, different styles, different, you know, very interesting. It was very interesting reading it. Yeah.
Yes, I give up the endeavor of like presenting everything because it is so rich with so many contributions, so many settings, methodologies. Of course, there is a common atmosphere, common threads, and it is really, really great to have read this book. So it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you very much indeed. I loved the way it was developing also, because the different people, we tried to have a kind of a conversation in the background. And especially the thing that was really very rewarding was mixing philosophers and organization theorists. In the beginning, it didn't bode well, I must say, because in the beginning, there were too many people who sort of could not communicate. But then it turned out that both they learned how to communicate, and the book sort of, I hope, reflects this, that the sort of common ground between philosophy and organizational theory, it's not easy. It's a bit shaky. The ground is shaky, but hello, Daniel.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We have to wait some minutes because we are waiting for other speakers. Silvia and Michela and Jenny. So 3 speakers.
Geographically, we're all the way from Palermo to Helsinki.
From the very south of Europe to the very north.
Yes.
And Oslo.
And Oslo. It's even more north than Helsinki.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. A bit more
Yes.
north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
other people are joining us, but good afternoon to all the other people who are joining us in the last minute. We are still waiting for some of the speakers, so it's almost 5 o'clock here, but
I wondered what the image in Martin Bieber's camera represents. Is it an apartment block? Martin, what's the image in your background?
It's actually a library, and it symbolizes the new world because it's not in Europe, actually. But I would have this. I would like to have this library at home. Monica, my compliments. I like the book as well. It's really well edited, and also to your co-editor. I think it's a good collection, and I would recommend to any management scholar.
Thank you so much.
well, I think we will be a bit late because it's 5 p.m. now, and some of the speakers are not here, so we can wait some minutes.
I think I see some people in the process of connecting.
Okay.
So maybe there will be more of us soon.
Okay. Silvia is here. Hi, Silvia. Good afternoon. Hi, Ilaria. Yeah. I think we are waiting for Michaela, but she wrote me that she will be 10 minutes late. And Jenny Alter, I think we can wait a couple of minutes, and then we start. Then the other speakers will join us. So we will give the words after. So just a couple of minutes and then we start. Okay.
Yes, sounds reasonable. Maybe some people have technical issues, and these, as we well know, may or may not be solved. So let's hope that they will be solved and everything will be well.
Okay.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Buongiorno. Ciao. Good afternoon. Michela wrote me that she's trying to enter. Maybe Davide, if you can hear me, you can see if there's someone who is trying to enter the room. And then we can start. Davide is here. Davide Biziak.
Hello, Guillermo. Michela is contacting me. She's entering. She's using the link. You can start right now, I think.
Okay. So we can start this webinar, and welcome to everybody. I am Guillermo Faldetta. I am Professor of Organization Studies in the Core University of Enna in Italy, here in Sicily. And this webinar is devoted to the presentation of the book Aesthetics, Organization, and Humanistic Management, edited by Monica Costera, who is here, and Cezary Wozniak, if my pronunciation is correct. And this is a very interesting book. It's a collection of chapters and on the theme of aesthetics in organizations, and many different authors, different scholars, philosophers, organization and management scholars, but also artists or art curators. In this book, in the different chapters, develop different perspectives, use the different theoretical approaches, different methodologies on this issue of aesthetics and humanistic management. So for me, it was a pleasure to read this book, and also to review this book, because there is a review of this book was published just a few months ago, in the .org International Journal. And from these activities, this review of the book, we had the idea also to organize a presentation of the book with some qualified speakers who are here to discuss about the main ideas that you can find in this book. So before giving the words to the speakers, before presenting the speakers, I have to thank all the speakers who have accepted to be here this afternoon, but also I have to thank the .org Research Network, particularly Luigi Maria Sicca, who is in charge of the coordination of this research network, also Davide Bisiak, who helped us to also organize this event. And I have to remind us that the .org research network have some interesting, as I may say, artifacts that are a series of books and also the .org International Journal, and particularly in the .org International Journal, now we have also some very interesting call for papers for special issues. One of them, we'll see also Monica Costera as one of the guest editors, and I can recall that this call for papers that is about the poetics of organizing have a deadline on 15th of September 2022. So there is 1 year, about 1 year from now, to for those who are interested in this issue, in this topic, the poetics of organizing. There is much time to think about a possible work to submit for this special issue. So this afternoon we will have 6 speakers, and we will have Silvia Gherardi, Jenny Holt, and then Birgit Jevanker, Michela Marchiori, Luca Pareski, and Martin Bieber. And then also Monica Costera, who is one of the editor of the book, that is here to make some conclusion at the end of this webinar. So I will give the words to every speaker, and about 7-8 minutes each, because we want to leave space for a debate, a discussion with all the participants here. I know that among the participants, there are also some of the authors of the chapters of the book edited by Monica. So it would be very, very, very interesting to also to hear their voices in the discussion that we will open after the presentation of the speakers. So let's start, and I give the word to, first of all, to Silvia Gherardi. So please, Silvia, the floor is yours, and thank you for being here.
Yes, here I am. So first of all, thank you very much for this kind invitation. Thanks to Guglielmo and thanks to .org, and especially for the opportunity to read this book. I should say that is a book very rich. It's a very rich book collecting different perspectives and sensibilities on art and aesthetics. And I should say also that it's surprisingly rich, since the theme of organizational aesthetics has been around for long now. So in a sense, is surprising that this book offers a fresh, something fresh and something new. It was a nice surprise to go through the contribution. And of course, it's difficult, if not impossible, to render in few minutes the diversity and this richness of the 15 contribution. So what I want to offer to the discussion about this book are only 2 points, are 2 points that in a sense are transversal to many chapters and are themes that are dear to me, and also that I think are key for organization studies now, and of course themes to which art and aesthetics, aesthetics and organizing can contribute, well, first of all, arise in this point. So I want to talk very briefly about imagination, the role of imagination, why imagination, and spacing. I take each at a time, of course, and I think that the theme of imagination, or of something that is there without being there, is important. So one can ask, which is the relation to organization studies and between organization studies and imagination? And in a sense, the answer, or an answer, is easy, is simple. When we think that we need imagination to be able to change the organizations we live in, to change for the better, of course, and to change organization in the face of the challenges that the Anthropocene is posing to, in this moment, to our society, to the organization, and also to us personally. So we need imagination. We need imagination, and imagination is leading us to philosophies, to poetry, to narrative, to film. And we need imagination to be creative in the way that we develop organization studies as a body of knowledge. Then we may ask, but or where is imagination? How can we think of imagination? Of course, there is not only one way of thinking about imagination and of defining imagination. And what I like very much is the definition that Kearney gives of imagination, and he says something like, imagination is a laboratory of the possible, inviting us through reverie and the poetry to give a future to the past. So that imagination authorizes us to dream about alternative realities. And what we see is shaped by our imagination, and not only, but our sensory activities. And in this book, several chapters in different ways, with different backgrounds, with different sensibilities, engage with the theme. And the richness that imagination contributes to the book dwells in the power to convert absence into presence. This is the power of imagination, and we can easily see how it needs different methodologies, different theories, different methodologies in organization studies, away from rational and cognitive ways of understanding organization. The second thing that I found interesting, crucial, and transversal to several chapters is spacing. And I say spacing exactly to underline the move from space to spacing that constitute a challenge. And this challenge is the challenge of understanding organizational space as material, embodied, affective, processual, open-ended, multiple, and practice. So that we can ask what is the relationship of spacing and organization studies. And the answer is partly obvious or taken for granted because organizing is spacing, and also because the relationship with spacing, the artifact of space, has been a theme going on in organizational aesthetics since the beginning. So what is less evident in this is, and is also is less evident and also is more difficult to engage with, is to ask how spacing is performed. But if you want, COVID have made evident in this last year how spacing was performed through digital technologies and how our spacing are multiple, plural, processual, and that there is a need to that space interrogate organization studies, because in spacing there is the possibility of creativity, so that the invention of other uses of space outside the functional, the ordered, how we can invent other rhythm, other ways of being in space, and to perform matter in organization studies and in space. I see the face of Jean-Luc Morisot, and I should say that we have had a similar experience in Paris with the exhibition of Tino Segal, and also with the friends that have been working in this performance. So as a conclusion, because I'm taking too long time, I say that several chapters in this book engage with spacing, even if they do not address spacing as such and with this name. But for example, as performance, as filmic, as best. So I think that there is a message that is underlying this sensibility to space. And in my opinion is that research is a performance that experiments with the aesthetics and the embodiment, but for which there is no recipe, nor must there be one. And this is something that the book shows in a nice way. And thank you, Guglielmo, and I pass to the next.
Silvia, thank you very much. Your consideration were so precious about imagination first and about space and then, and very coherent with the issue that are taken in this book. And thank you also for being in time. And now, well, I don't see it. Jenny Holt is not here. I think not now. So we can give the words to Birgit. Birgit, I was
okay. Thank you. I need to share some slides.
Okay.
Okay.
You go.
I try to. I think you need to disable something. You disabled. You must say okay. you disabled participant sharing of slides, so you need to do something.
I'm not in charge. It's Davide who is.
I can share them, Birgit.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
I'll
try once more then here. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay, perfect.
yes. So I wanted to. Okay, so I'm very happy to be participating in this event. Thank you to both the editors and Punto.org for inviting us into discussing this book, edited by Kostera and Wozniak, and it's just came out. And it's offering 15 interesting chapters, as Sylvia said, by 22 diverse authors. It's extremely rich. And I also like that each chapter is not too long. They're quite pinpointed, all of them. So it's often a mixture of philosophizing and examples, intriguing examples that help us to reflect and to imagine further. So I found it a wonderful experience to start reading it, and I will talk from a personal take from my fresh reading, and it's incomplete reading. I haven't read the full book yet, but so I will share what some part of what I have read. The first chapter is inviting us into the book foundations, and they talk about it as a learning journey. And my first question is to the editors and maybe some of the authors: how did you come about? How did you come together for the book project? And it would be lovely to, if you could reflect a bit further on your choices for the book and the chapter's foundations. I just picked out some of the books from my bookshelves. Of course, Merleau-Ponty and Gherardi's book, Strati's book is, I could also added more books here. But I really like the foundation. So what did you learn from using some of these groundworks in your writing for this book? So there are like 3 parts of the book: reflection, imagination, as Sylvia said, and practice. So I will pick some of the chapters that I have read. And one of the chapters that intrigued me was by Antonio Strati, Art and Organizing, a Brief Personal Reflection. And he's sharing his case, so to say, is a cycle of frescoes in the Palazzo Pubblico in Siena, the fresco works there. And he said that one of the insights from this chapter is the importance of visiting recurrently something of extraordinary beauty, but also of extreme complexity. He shares how he does it. He goes there over and over again. He uses a lot of time when he goes there. And I think this is valuable also for research in other settings. He says, I've always looked at it slowly, guided by the natural light in the study of the figurations, colors, architecture, and also the interior lights of the frescoes. Step by step, I immersed myself in the painting of the Sienese Renaissance with all my senses. You can see he's inspired by Merleau-Ponty, but I really like how he elaborates how he does this. Picking up the smells, moving now here, now there, taking quick notes from time to time. In his sense-making of his field experience, he says that it is an art not celebrating religion, the divinities, the nobility, the rich man, but rather it's making the ideals of republican citizenship immortal and related to the earthly organization of the bad and the good government. And of course, he's elaborating this in the chapter, and he's also in the middle asking himself, and is making this visible also for the reader. What is it? What is it that fascinated me so much about Lorenzetti's pictorial art? So maybe if he's here, he can share a little bit more about this, his fascination for this, going there over and over again, which I think is a very important advice also in other kind of field research. Another chapter is by Jerzy Kokiatkevich. I don't know if I say it right, but it's a very strong chapter on the incompleteness theorem, the importance of reinterpretation in management studies. And like the two editors introducing the book, he also shares that the origins of our fields were not so narrow. Rather, it was the opposite of what we often believe they to be. And one example he uses is Maslow, an organizational psychologist. And he says that it's a kind of reduced and even false meanings of this classical management theorizing, and which I have also experienced in executive classes over and over again. It's represented or presented in a kind of false way, like a pyramid, like it's self-realization instead of self-actualization. It's not exactly the same meaning. And also that there is a hierarchy. And Maslow never talked about it in this way. So I would really like all management students to read this kind of chapter. And I also wonder, why do the meanings of management theories easily drift from the original meanings? The next part is 3 chapters on imagination, and I picked chapter 5 by Mathilda Dahl, Pierre-Guy de Montaut, and Jenny Hellin. They are talking about writing and dreams and imagination, and they ask, how can we write about the power of daydreaming? Where their project is with local farm owners that are in difficult situations. And they go in depth into one case which I really like, and I also recommend it for other writers. The owner manager of Stora Gåsemora, a farm at Fårö, that's for film enthusiasts. You would know that this is an island where Ingmar Bergman had his studios. And some insights from this chapter is, through daydreaming, the present reality can be expanded into new life worlds, and you can also live several lives at the same time, and they get blurred. And Birgitta reflects that this gives her strength to move on, especially when grim reality is unbearable. What I find highly interesting and new is that the writers are using a triptych, and they also add to portray the case, and they also add a reflexive epilogue in the writing. So my question to the authors is, what is your own experience of researching and writing from this kind of local project with such a challenging topic? Of course, there are several more trigger chapters. I would love to mention them, but since we have little time, I would leave that to the further debate. So many thanks for sharing this book with us. And of course, I've learned the importance of using arts in writing for arts organization and humanistic management from the dark as well as bright sides. That's a takeaway from the book. In my executive education, I've used a play from Henrik Ibsen called The Master Builder. And it portrays the dark sides of leadership. And I would like to write more about this. So I think now I have a useful book for my further learning and writing. I was very inspired to take imagination seriously. So thanks also to Punto.org for this.
Okay, thank you very much, Birgit, also for having posed some questions to the authors and the editors of the book. So please, the authors who are here to take note of the comments and of Birgit. So after in the discussion part of this webinar, we will have time to discuss about also the issues that were raised by Birgit. I can't see Jenny Holt, so we can go further with other speakers. And please, Michela Marchiori is here from Rome too. So I give the word to Michela for.
Thank you, Guglielmo. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Punto.org for organizing this important and very interesting presentation, and thanks to the author, because as I said today, unfortunately I couldn't read all the book, but I read some chapters, and my curiosity is raising, because I'm going to read all the book and to use part of the book for my student, because the book contains very important and many input tips that a professor of management organization as I am could use in very useful way. But as I have little time, I would like to point my attention and to bring in this discussion two things that was very important for me, were very important for me. First of all, the first thing is an aspect, a topic that already some of you have highlighted, and also Guglielmo in his presentation in his book review has highlighted. That is, it's multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, because this is the first thing that it is important to highlight, but it is important to highlight that this multidisciplinarity is aimed to a key message that is there is a need for a change in management studies, and to affirm a new season aimed at new ways of interpreting the life of organization. Many authors in this book come from different disciplines: management and organizational scholars, professor of history of arts, philosopher, artists, curators, who address the issues of the relationship between aesthetic, art, and management from very different point of view, but with a single intent, that is to push towards new ways of interpreting organization, able in describing and restoring the real complexity of organization, and to offer an alternative way to the mainstream in management studies, and in particular a new and alternative way on respect on the reductionism in interpreting the reality of organization. In this sense, I appreciated very much, among others, the chapter 3 of this book, the chapter that already Birgit has cited, of Jerzy. Sorry, but I not be able to pronounce Kochakiewicz, and Jerzy explained in this book how management scholars, a very important sentence, how management scholars who adopt the mainstream perspective have constantly distorted the interpretation of classical authors belonging to the psychological, sociological, social psychological disciplines, aimed at an instrumental use of the concept used by these great big authors. Jerzy refers, for example, to Maslow, to affirm how all his complex and important theoretical construction has been reduced in management book that follows a mainstream approach, has been reduced to a single concept, namely the hierarchy of needs displayed in the pyramid, which, however, we don't find in the author books. And this is only to use a concept in a reductionism or functionalism way, aimed to demonstrate how considering worker needs on behalf of management can bring to a major satisfaction in workers, and so in this way influence their behavior in order to align them to the organizational strategy. In other terms, the reductionist approach in interpreting authors, as Jerzy highlighted, is aimed to the objective of control, and through this way to the final aim, that is the profit of the firm. More recently, mainstream manager authors have referred to the studies developed in the art and in the aesthetic field to use concepts useful to improve the well-being of the organization and workers who live in it. Unfortunately, they have always done it in the same approach, using the same approach, that is, having as a priority the profit and the point of view of the firm. Also the best entrepreneur experience do not escape this rule. I am thinking, for example, to our great history of our entrepreneur Adriano Olivetti, who used artists and architects to improve the beauty of his factory and make his worker live better in the space of the factory. Nevertheless, he couldn't or he wanted, or he didn't want to give up the the tailorist and Fordist way of work and the assembly chain. And through this way, as one side, he aims to give a better sense of living in the fabric, but on the other side, he influences the health of his workers. So, if we want, it seems to me by the reading of the book that if we want to give a full and non-instrumental sense to the relationship between aesthetic, art, and management, we must think the aesthetics and beauty and the beauty question, questioning the mainstream way of structuring the organization. Aesthetic is the sensitives. Aesthetics speaks of beauty and sensitivity. Aesthetics deals with the way in which the world is perceived and how the world excites you. So aesthetics has to do with the body of the person, and not only with the rationality. And this could be a very important shift from the traditional of the mainstream way of designing organization. Therefore, designing an organization in an aesthetically way, or considering aesthetics, means understanding how emotions influence people in a decisive way, means really putting people at the center of the firm in their whole body and minds, and not just thinking about how to use body and minds of people to achieve business goals. This is a very, very important shift, but in designing organization, but I think that this is a new way in which art and aesthetic could improve the design or organization in a humanistic and really humanistic and real, humanistic approach. The second and the last point that I would like to offer to the discussion is relating to the way of writing management books, because in the chapter 9 there is some important claims, some important sentences about how to change the way of writing management book and journals, because this is very important in order to produce a new way, a new approach to the management studies. And in which sense I think that some contribution from the books that talk about writing in a poetic way, writing management book using language and inspiration from artists, art, and in general aesthetics streams, could be another important way to introduce an alternative approach in management studies. Thank you to the authors, and thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you very much, Michela, for reminding us as organizational scholars of our reductionist approach, and even when maybe we don't want or we don't think about it, maybe we are totally immersed in this kind of way of thinking. And I think also about the way we teach to our students the organizational principles, and we have to work a lot on it as organizational scholars, I think. But we have to go to the other speaker. We have Luca Pareski. Luca Pareski is an organizational scholar too, but I know he's also an expert of arts and literature. So please, Luca.
So thank you very much, Guglielmo. I want to thank Monica, I told her before, but all the authors of this chapter for this very rich book, and also the .org ecosystem for giving me the opportunity of presenting this book. And actually also Michela, because she said something that I was going to say. So we agree on that. I will try to skip the part that she already said, but okay. So,
sorry, Luca, it is not a surprise for me because we have the same story for some part of the same
yes,
story.
So this book is very rich, very dense. I will not go through all of it because it's impossible in the time that I have. So I will highlight some of the things that I found very interesting throughout this book. First of all, I feel like this is a very European book, meaning that it prefers complexity over simplicity in the best possible way, of course. So it is really not a mainstream book. In that it avoids the easy shortcuts to get richer understanding of phenomena. Against the reductionism, against the utilitarianism, I felt it endowed with rationality, which is very different from the deterministic rationality of the mainstream books. And I was wondering whether this is also because of the career path of the authors that wrote this book, because if I'm not wrong, only one is based in UK, and also I see that different person among the authors have a background which is not academic only. I found philosopher, artists, art curators, literary author, a case of a dentist. I don't think that the career determines the output. Rather, I think that it is a co-construction of the career and the output, and I see a path that is a search for complex and authentic path, which is reflected both in the personal trajectory and in this chapter. So as for organization, the author of this book rejects the idea that management has to produce knowledge useful for managers and disseminate the conviction that the current economic system is the best possible. So what we see is that management at the moment is not aimed at serving people. And this is something that the author acknowledged and that we see in the current crisis. The pandemic is the most important one. So they moved to bring on the humanistic management that encompasses a broader view of organization and people working within them and around them. And the idea of the humanistic management is that it defends human dignity in the face of its vulnerability and upholds humanity as the ultimate and key principle of all the economic activities. So from human resource back to human subject, from human capital back to human being. And this is something that we take from here is something that Michela already underlined, so that we have to reject the oversimplification of management, and also when we read the classic, go back to the original form of the classic in order to avoid this oversimplification that gives us very stupid snippets of the most important theorists. So if I'm not wrong, in my understanding, aesthetics plays the role of the can opener. So it permits to open up new research settings, focusing on new phenomena, and calling for a panoply of creative and innovative methodologies, therefore helping us in exploring new paths and avoiding reductionism. And the point is not about introducing the study of aesthetics or aesthetics in organization, rather stopping to focus on an oversimplified picture of what organizations are and acknowledging that the aesthetics is part of the organization and it is something we can deal with in our everyday activity as a researcher and people working within organization. So we just have to stop focusing only on organizing and control and see that the picture is bigger than that. And then there are two themes that the author acknowledged in the introduction and permeate several chapters, and I think that they are very important. Maybe I noticed that because they resonate with my own research, and I'm talking about performativity and power. So as for performativity, I think that the work of the author of this book is very important in pushing forward a new proposal, maybe not new, but at least not mainstream, regarding what is sayable and what is not sayable in management studies. So I found it very rich, very food for our mind, because they open up something which is really out of the box. so it is great to challenge the mainstream, but at the same time, something I wanted to ask the author is that whether there is a way for finding this kind of contribution also in the most important journals within our discipline, because those are very important, but at the same time, I feel like the system tends to reproduce itself. So especially for the younger scholar, while we can challenge the mechanism of the academic careers and the policies of the journals, how they decide to publish, I also feel like that the reasoning on the writing is something that would be important to find its way to the mainstream journal. Maybe not the mainstream journal, but also several important journal. I mean, I don't have to tell you that the language is political and that the language can perform things. But this is something that came to my mind when reading about a chapter which I found very interesting, which is, well, more than one chapter. There is one chapter dealing with what form of writing a certain research requires, and the fact that academic text must be beautiful rather than just informative. But I think that is a common experience to deal with a reviewer that tells you, oh yes, but a standard way of writing this paper will be better because it will be better for our reader. So maybe it is possible that in my experience, I didn't write well enough in order to convince the reviewer. But at the same time, I found very stressful sometimes to try to propose something which is not just informative and plain, and, you know, dealing with the way academic write, and then having some reviewer which is very like a policeman saying, no, you cannot do this, you have to get to be strict in the interpretation of how to write. And the power, the second thing, the power is also connected to the things, to the activity of teaching. And I'm back to what Michela was saying before. I found all of the chapter wonderful, a collection of impressionist picture of how to perform research. I was wondering whether it is possible to grasp a common trait to be introduced in the way we teach for PhD students, but also at the level of master students, because otherwise the system will tend to reproduce itself, and these wonderful ideas that we are sharing together will be limited to some of us for personal interest or trajectories are interested in this kind of themes and topic. So I was wondering whether, I mean, if there is a way to use something as a pick lock to enter into the system. Maybe it's the methodology that can be used in order to enter into the system and propose all of this methodological approach as something that can enrich the traditional management studies, and then then go step by step. Because I really think that several of the propositions of this book are very important for how we teach and for how we make research. And I'm not speaking only of like long-term plans, but also of small things, but that can make a difference. And once again, reading the classic in their original version and not in the Vulgata, as some of our common teacher would have said, so in a very stupid and simplified version, is something that can make a difference. So I think that my time is over. So once again, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Luca, for having added something very important, like again, the way we teach, the way we use the classical, but also the problem related to the publishing process of our research, and this is an important, relevant issue for us as researchers. So maybe in the discussion part of this webinar, some of the authors will give us some comments on that. I think we have the last speaker, I think, that is Martin Bieber, because maybe Jenny had some problems, so she's not here. And so Martin, please We hear you, we can hear you. Martin?
Okay, I hope you can hear me clearly. If not, then I will switch off my video. But if you can hear me, I'll leave it on. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk here. And thank you very much for the authors to really contribute quite interesting chapters for the book. And I want to, let's say, give 3 propositions, what I found in various chapters of the book. The first proposition is aesthetic thinking does not simplify, but complexifies. I liked Luca's comment as well, because he said it's a very European approach, but I think maybe it's even necessary to think like that. But I will come to that later on. The second proposition is aesthetic thinking leaves room for ambiguity and as well room to cope with vague situations. And the final proposition is aesthetic thinking helps us to understand why management theories do not work. This might be a little bit challenging, but I will come to that as well later on. So the first one, aesthetic thinking does not simplify, but complexifies. That is valid for practice and for theory. So for practice, managers usually don't know what kind of variables are in the game. Then they don't know their interdependencies, the disruptions, all these unforeseen changes. We all know how the pandemic changed the plans of companies and how the pandemic made it really almost impossible for certain companies to act. And up to my understanding, there are many pandemics out there, many little pandemics, which complexify the situation for decision takers every day. And therefore, for us theorists and for us management scholars, it's even more complicated because we have to deal with that as well. And for us, I think this kind of simplification does not work as well, because any theory is only a try to understand what is happening, coming closer to a certain, I would say, reality. And we have to be aware that theories are always wrong in certain situations. Only in a certain, let's say, teeny tiny contextual frame, they might be helpful. And an aesthetical lens helps us in this way in 2 dimensions. First, it brings the complexity back to re-engage with all these variables left out in the smart and smooth publication. Luca mentioned before the reviews, all these variables that the reviewers said, this is not clear enough, leave that out and focus on the most important points. Then it becomes maybe more doable for the paper and for the red thread in the paper, but it becomes a little bit more irrelevant as well, what the reviewers and maybe the reader would not imagine and would not see in the first stance. Well, on the one hand, we see the limits, and on the other hand, it enables us a little bit better. I mean, the aesthetic lens, it enables us a little bit better. It enables us really what to do. Like Monica and Cesare analyze as well in the introduction of the book. I would like, so if I would write a book, a similar book like that, maybe the title would be The Beauty of Complexity. So I would like to go in this direction to understand all the details, all the thick descriptions. Maybe not the big picture, because I think we always think the big is better than small. Maybe sometimes small is better, but I would say maybe the colorful picture, what kind of variables are really in the game. And what as well they address, so in the introduction, I mean, Monica and Cesare, they address the rationalistic discourse on management, and they reflect on that. I don't repeat everything, but I think it's quite important. So this is the first proposition, aesthetic thinking does not simplify. The second proposition, aesthetic thinking leaves room for ambiguity and uncertainty. There is a contribution by Daniel. Daniel Erickson.
Martin, I can hear.
Points out in his contribution, I quote here, the researchers write up the reason. No. Yes. Can you hear me now? Can you write me that in the chat?
Okay. I can hear you very well. I don't know the other people here if you.
Okay, because then I switch off the camera. I'm sorry if the connection is not that good. I repeat my last point. My last point was that Daniel Erickson, in his contribution, points out, I quote, researchers write up the results as if the post-positivist turns never occurred. And he brings in the narrative knowing and narrative. And there was a book a couple of years ago, Good Novels and Better Management. And I think this as well already pointed out, but I think it became even more important that we need these thick descriptions. We need these narratives. What Daniel does as well, he describes the difference between what is a story and what is a plot. A story is kind of the chronological sequence of what happens. And here we see it is the decision, and this is an aesthetic decision. So there comes in an aesthetic element in every paper. And I think this makes quite evident how important the aesthetic dimension and the aesthetic lens is. Daniel says, I quote, different plots trigger different enactments and sense-making processes and different type of narrative knowledge. And I think this is really supporting the second proposition, that this aesthetic thinking leaves room for ambiguity and to learn how to handle vague situations better. And then I come to my third point. Aesthetic thinking helps us to understand why management theory does not work, why management theories do not work. Maybe I should reformulate that. That was a little bit maybe too blunt. Maybe we should better understand in what situations they don't work. Maybe we should better understand the limits and hence also the power when they do work. Because sometimes they work, but sometimes you really think in companies, what the heck? This time something is really wrong. And you really know, maybe you don't know what kind of variables influence why situation. But I think in the contribution of Sergei Kievich, he really describes that quite well. And I think it's really a better, I would say, a more critical self-understanding, what is also emerging in other contributions. Sergei, he kind of, he proposes to reread, to reinterpret, to recontextualize these kind of necessary components. And I think I can really support that, what is really important as well for our students, as well for managers in practice. And well, I further argue that this kind of ambiguity and openness opens up futures, and not only one future. And we had enacted to the ideas of imagination as well in chapter in the book. So I could reformulate my third proposition to aesthetic thinking helps us to understand management theory better, because we know under what conditions theories are simply confronted with too high expectations, which are impossible to meet. But an aesthetic dimension triggers this self-criticism of managers and practitioners, as Mateusz Falkowski analyzes in his chapter. And Mateusz poses the question, shouldn't the management break into the hitherto sacred realm of art with its own tools and ways of thinking? This made me think a little bit, because I was thinking it already happens. It happens that management is breaking in cultural organizations, and maybe with really quite severe consequences. But we can come to that in the discussion. I have no time to come to that. But I think it's quite interesting to see and to reflect knowledge, what it really has, what kind of consequences it has within art organizations and the art sector. So I conclude, what can the contribution of management, what can aesthetics be for contribution for management studies? So the first contribution I would see in the book and what we see in management, understand things in the very own time without too early conclusions. The sense is it is only to understand what is going on. Where the pre-understanding is possible, and there are many situations where the process is possible. And finally, an aesthetic answer. So my this book we first might to everybody who reads the Simple Management, everybody who reads it, just to know what can be the consequences of using these kind of management fields, to better understand what happens when you think in a management way and in a management style. So that means
we have lost Martin definitively. I don't know. I couldn't hear him very well. I don't know all of you, but maybe it's some connection problem. Martin?
At the very end, it was very difficult to hear what he was saying, but the beginning when he switched off the camera was okay.
Martin is here.
I'm here again. I'm sorry for my problems. I thank all the authors for their beautiful contributions.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. So I think we have enough time for a good discussion. Of course, we will give the words to Monica at the end, if Monica agrees, at the end of the discussion to conclude this this webinar. Before that, if some of the participants and first of all, of course, the authors of the chapter wants to say something. Also, we have collected some questions, some remarks from the some of the speakers, so we could start from there. If someone wants to replicate to some of them or say something else, feel free, please. If you want to join the hand, raise the hand, and I will give the word. I think we have some of the authors who was mentioned by some of the speakers, so maybe they want to say something, no? Who wants to break the ice?
I'm sorry, I'm always getting lost in the interface here, and I cannot find the way to raise my hand.
Okay.
And I'm sure there is some possibility, but if I'll just jump in, but thank you, all of you, but for the discussants, Punto.org for organizing this. And it's really lovely to meet you and speak about the book. And I think I would like to raise one other issue. I think complementary as always to Sylvia's mention of spacing. I think time is important, that aesthetics, it's very difficult to do quick aesthetics, to do 1 minute engagements with with the sublime, with the complex, with the difficult. And I think that's something that's I don't know if it's increasingly, but certainly a barrier that we're all facing, where whenever we meet each other, we tell each other how busy we are, how many things we have on our plate, when we run out of time when talking with students, when during lectures and seminars. And that's, I don't know, I don't have any answers, but I think that's something that we have to seriously think about if we are to help reintroduce complexity, aesthetics, reflection, that if we try to find the most efficient way of saying something, of proposing an idea, of promoting, of teaching a model, a theory, a notion, it will always be the simplest way. It will always lead us towards simplification. And some time ago at a university, which will remain nameless, I was asked, or in fact, the whole department was, everyone in the whole department, everyone was asked to introduce or describe their research in the form of a tweet, so 160 characters. As you can well imagine, many of us struggled. And I do think that's such a wonderful encapsulation of the kind of pressures we find ourselves under. And we have to find ways of going outside a tweet or beyond a tweet.
Oh, thank you, Jersey. Thank you very much for your remarks. Okay, let us see if there are some other participants who want to share with us their ideas or thought. Okay, Jean-Luc Morisseau raised his hand. Please. You are one of the author, I know, so.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for all the remarks and these kind remarks. And I just wanted to take the advantage to again thanks Monica and Cesare for welcoming us, and just to confess or to testify of the way the book was made. Two elements. First, we were asked to rewrite again and again and again several times. And it was very good, especially when we speak about against reductionism or wanting to go, okay, to have a project where it's not just, yes, welcome, just, okay, do whatever you want. No, we had to rewrite, to think always further. And I think that's a collected book, a book of collection of paper are not always made this way. And we were very much satisfied after about our contribution. That it was at the first level. And the second element for this book is that we had the complete freedom about writing. And I think when we speak and we try to write something about aesthetics, it's all, okay, the writing needs to be personal in a way, or needs to be, okay, there needs to be an aesthetical element in the writing. Otherwise, you feel like it's cheating. It doesn't feel right. And that's why, okay, a book is a format where you can enjoy such a freedom, if you have some trust by the editors, of course. And so writing something for this book was not only a pleasure, was not only an honor, but was an experience. So in a way, I just wanted to add, there is a kind of, because aesthetics is all about experience. Okay, we had to experience the fact of writing about aesthetics. There is a kind of aesthetical elements about writing about aesthetics. I don't know if it makes sense, but it was a kind of after the fact thinking about this contribution.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. Well, the way the book has been planned and written is one of the issue of this webinar. Maybe at the end, Monica will say something about it, because we are very curious of the journey of making this book. But before that, let's see if there are Antonio Strati, I see, and then Vito La Sala. So Antonio, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and thanks for the invitation. Thanks for this nice event organized by the organizer, let's say, briefly. And thanks for all the comments, because there is a variety of point of view that emerged regarding this book. And this is very interesting if you consider this artifact, which is an artifact made of different contributions. Just now, Jean-Luc Morisot said we had the freedom about what to write, about how to write, but he was saying somebody had to rewrite, several times, because there was a kind of project behind all this. But this project is complex in itself, and we had a variety of reaction and consideration that pointed out some important aspect of all the book, but also focused on different points, on different aspects. So a book which is complex in itself, that raises some complex interpretation and a different interpretation of what is the book in itself. This is magnificent. I mean, it's a great outcome, and this is the merit of Monica and Cesare, because they did I guess in a very beautiful way, because they had a time in the project, but they contacted, for instance, with me. Monica asked me to write the chapter. Then I said, well, no, I don't have the time to think and to write the chapter. Then she went back saying, well, but put there personal considerations about the topic. So she gave me the space where to put my contribution. And then I started to work on it. And then all came out. I mean, it was the writing process, and of course, what were the comments, etc., etc. But I guess that this gives an idea of what is to give freedom to the research and to researchers, which is very important for the aesthetic understanding of organizational life. I still remember something that Carl Rhodes, I think I can mention him, who is in Australia now. He told me, I didn't know this, I was there for giving a speech conference. And he told me, well, I started your book during my master. It was my surprise. I mean, I was considering Carl like a younger colleague, but a scholar like me. And he said, well, I didn't follow aesthetics as a field of study, but I learned that I had the chance to be free in my research. And this was a great consideration about what had been my work, being free and having the freedom to write and to study and to research and to define the field, the object of research, and the way to do it. And this is something that emerges in this book from all the comments and from all the considerations. This gives something in the continuing of having freedom during research, and which is the aesthetics, now to be different and to be equal at the same time. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Well, Vito Sala raised his hand before.
I'm here.
Okay, please.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I was thinking about. I haven't read the book yet, but I was thinking on a theme that we were discussing with Davide Biziak and Professor Sicca, that concerned the fact that aesthetics is also something that we bring with us in our works, in our paper, even when we have a research, an empirical research, so with connection to the places we go when we have empirical researches, and to the places that we are, to the set of the empirical research, and that aesthetics of these places is not neutral with regard to what we want to research in that places. For example, we are working on a research that I have done in a school, in a theater school in Paris, and we was thinking that the fact that the school in last century was a places where they fight box, it was not neutral on the aesthetics of that place and on the sensation and feelings that the place gives to people that are in that place. So aesthetics is also, I think, something that we could include in the description of our empirical analysis, and especially aesthetic of the place in which analyses are set.
Okay, thank you very much, Vito, for your contribution. There are other comments, remarks from other participants here. Silvio is raising, Silvio Ripetta. Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Of course.
Okay, so I had a question for the authors of the book. I have not read the book yet, like Vito, but I had a question. I want to ask to the authors if we can consider this book as a contribution to the issues of social inclusion. So I want to ask if this aesthetic perspective can be a contribution to the social inclusion. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. If some of the, I don't know if some of the authors want to answer this question, or we will let Monica to give comments also to this question. If someone wants to, Steve Tyler, maybe.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question, of course, but and I have not read the book yet, and I just wanted to reach out and say I'm really thankful that I found out about this actually just this morning, that this was happening, and I'm able to attend. I look forward to reading the book, and I place this in the context of, to me, it feels like it's been a very good summer for aesthetics, with the article in the Academy of Management Annals, and the article in the Academy of Management Annals on craft, and it feels like there's a thing happening in aesthetics, around aesthetics, that feels very powerful to me. And having spent the last 20 years working in the field, it's very, very nice to hear. And I particularly mentioned the piece on the article on craft because I think that's an area that I didn't hear explicitly a lot in the discussion today, but I heard implicitly that the ideas of craft and practice, and we do some theorizing around practice, but more theorizing around craft as being very related to aesthetics, being a very aesthetic thing. And as an idea, I think it might be useful in terms of practice for anyone who's thinking about aesthetics to also be thinking about craft. So I just want to toss that out there as a sort of a bit of provocation. And again, just to thank everyone for this work. I look forward to reading it. And it's to me, it is such a pleasure to actually see so many people that I don't know who are doing work in aesthetics. That's fabulous.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And the .org research network serves also for this, for connecting people around some issues like aesthetics in this case, or other. If you want, you can see the .org website to see the other initiatives. We have other two raised hands. So maybe first Jersey and then Jean-Luc. So please, Jersey.
Yeah, I just wanted to very slightly pick up on Sylvia's issue of inclusion. Is that I think you can. There's always that that a scientific discourse of any kind is almost by definition very exclusive. There are lots of gatekeepers on all kinds of levels, employment, degrees, publications, and so on. So there's the kind of the slight version of saying we trying to push the boundaries. I think all of us a little bit open, both in the selfish way of, well, listen to us too. And we want to speak with a voice that sounds a bit more our own than what we read in lots of what passes for science. And on the other hand, there's also, I think, a bigger issue, and which is a little bit less self-serving. And I don't know if Liz Carnegie, who's here, will pick up on that, because she's writing a lot on the issues of post-colonialism and voices, and ones which are heard and which are silenced. But I think that it's at least the aesthetic perspective. If please contradict me if any of you don't agree. But I do think that always raises the question about the erasure, about what's not being heard, about what's being excluded. And even if the kind of force is not immediately positive and forceful, I do think that it leaves at least some space on to ask those questions, which I think is often more than what we get in the very standardized version of what, well, we're allowed to say.
Okay, thank you, Jerzy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe Jean-Luc Morisot wants to add something.
No, just to follow on Jose, and I would fully agree what he says. Okay, the reflection on aesthetic doesn't lead automatically to more social inclusion, of course. On the contrary, there can be a kind of master aesthetics, something which is the good way of seeing the beautiful. And I think the reflection of Jacques Rancière on this is absolutely crucial. And that means there is a usual distribution of the sensible, what is beautiful, what is right, who has the right to speak, who is silenced, who is not legitimate to speak about aesthetics, and who doesn't have taste or something like this. And there is a possibility of some groups, of somebody, to propose a kind of another aesthetical world, or being in the world, another way of feeling, of tasting, of speaking, and so on. And this can disturb the order and might possibly lead to more social inclusion if the police, if we still use the Rancière vocabulary, if the police doesn't silence or say, okay, it's very special aesthetics, doesn't, but the aesthetical is very political, of course. And if we want to and often what Rancière says, that often is unseen, unseeable, because it's okay, it's agreed upon, and so it's another type of critique, and especially social inclusion is okay. A lot of things we say and we about aesthetics is about, okay, this is a right aesthetic, the good way of seeing, feeling, and so on. So social inclusion is problematical, but I think aesthetics is a way to approach and to address these kind of problems.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Luc. Thank you, Steve, for suggesting us to consider Organization Aesthetics, the journal that you are the editor, I think, of this journal, and I agree with Monica and consider also .org International Journal, of course. I remember, as I said at the beginning of this webinar, of the call for paper for a special issue, which will have Monica, but also Ilaria Boncori as guest editors, among the guest editors. So, are there other comments, suggestions, remarks from the participants? Elizabeth?
I equally don't know how to make the little hand go up. I'm so sorry. I very much enjoyed this, and it made me think, because I see my own paper as quite marginal to some of the debates. And Jerzy insisted on bringing me in there. I like this idea about aesthetics being about possibilities, but that was one of the earlier speakers said. But what I was kind of thinking about is not so much social inclusion, it's about the power shift which happens over space and time in the paper that I was looking at, between something that had become aesthetically embarrassing within the kind of Western culture, which was colonial art, which actually was being turned around, taken, owned by the very people that had been mused for the art in the first place, and in so doing had created a totally different aesthetic about their own history, if not through their own eyes. And that's a very powerful thing to say, we're going to
own your view of us as both aesthetic, but actually it shows the shift. It's a shift in money. It's a shift, you know, and now there's whole museums being set up as we speak to locate this art. And so it's interesting, I think, how a despised aesthetic, an embarrassing aesthetic, actually becomes a very powerful aesthetic when it becomes owned by a different kind of cultural voice. And that isn't social inclusion, it's about a powerful inclusion, I think, really. Anyway, that was all I was going to say, and only because I was called out. But thank you, I'm enjoying the debates.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your comment. So maybe we are going to the Antonio. Are you raising your hand? Because okay.
About social inclusion, we don't have to forget that aesthetics is also discriminating, marginalizing people. It's not a social inclusion. Aesthetics is a life, so is the ugliness of life, is the grotesque in life, is the what is unbearable. If an aesthetic feeling is is not just the beauty. Is aesthetics is to smell odors which are horrible, or to smell odors which are characterizing an organizational life, like an hospital. If you think now just at the pandemic, you can imagine now what is the aesthetics in all these processes to be subjected to all these different levels of illness and institutionalization, but it goes to odors, physical bodies, injection, treating the body and trying to not to help people to survive. I mean, aesthetics is all this, is the work 12, 14 hours of these people with the risk of, since they breathe like all the others, to be infected because of the COVID. You see, aesthetics is the air that we breathe. Aesthetics is all this. So we cannot just link to something aesthetics. Aesthetics is such a complex variety of our way to be alive, to be in the world. So there is a power, there is a discrimination, there is a marginalization. There is the ugliness and not just the beauty in aesthetics. So this is what I wanted to add.
Thank you again, Antonio. Okay. Are there other? Maybe we can go to the conclusion. Okay. So, Monica, if you want to conclude this this afternoon, this very interesting afternoon of discussions, talking, maybe, okay. I give you the word and then I will conclude after.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very, very much indeed. It has been such a joy and a pleasure, and a sort of fulfillment of a dream, of which I will tell you in a moment, because it all started with it. The idea for this book was born in a green field close to the small town of Łowicz in the Mazovian area of Poland. And it happened during a conversation that I had with a friend, Karolina Matyjaszkowicz, who is an artist, and we started to get to know each other. It was our relationship was in the process of forming. I think it was the first serious conversation we had, and we were talking about all sorts of things, and it was quite chaotic. And if I was to provide you with a summary, I would be in real trouble, because I don't really know what we were talking about. But then this topic came up of sitting there and talking in this field with the sky above us and the green grass around us. And she said, Carolina said, I've never talked with a management scientist before. Come to think of it, I don't think I have spoken with a social scientist at all. And well, then we went on to say that it's great to talk anyway, and that hopefully with this conversation will continue, which it did, and it still does. We're actually, Carolina, who did not contribute to this book because she says she doesn't like writing, but it doesn't matter in other forms of expression. So we've just written a little book of fairy tales, which means that she's done the illustrations, and we've had some moments of fantasizing about the characters, and then I've done the writing. But anyway, from that moment sprung a sort of desire, and even becoming an obsession in me. I mean, why don't we do this more often? Why don't we do this? There are so many fascinating management scholars and organizational theorists who write and speak about art, and some of them are present in this Zoom room. So some people that have really inspired me to consider art as a relevant area of interest for my theorizing and my research, and especially you, Antonio Strati. I really could not let you off the hook. I'm so glad that you contributed with the text to this book. But there has been such a multitude of good ideas circling around in conferences, in books, in publications, not in the mainstream, just as you said before, not in the mainstream. The mainstream was concerned about other things. So, and now we come to the central theme, which I think Sylvia mentioned most pertinently in her presentation today, and it's a recurring theme because it is really so important, and it's the spacing. So providing a space for this conversation is something extremely important, and it's something that is still part of a dream. So I asked my colleague, a philosopher from Krakow, Cesare, my co-editor, and I asked him to could we do this? Could we create a space for a conversation about aesthetics and organization with different participants, people from organization theory and people from outside of organization theory, so philosophers, artists, curators? Could we do this? And he said, sure, it sounds crazy, but of course we can try to do this. So this is what we used as a starting point. And what I was hoping for from the very beginning is that it will not become just a book. I mean, I loved doing it. I loved going through the process that you've mentioned before, the Jean-Luc, the writing and rewriting, because when you rewrite it, and not in the mainstream kind of way, but in the way that the conversational kind of way, is that you put your thoughts in a conversation, in a relationship to the thoughts of other readers. So that was really wonderful to me. I hope it was to the other authors as well. But I was really hoping that this will not stop here. And so that's why we refrain from writing conclusions. Instead of writing conclusions, we invited Hugo Letiche to write a postscript that would provoke other people to join the conversation, which is a sort of extending, a way of extending the space, and sort of hoping that somebody would grasp it on the other side and join us and do something and add something. And this is happening here. And I'm not surprised that Punto.org is doing this. And I'm not surprised, but I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. I hope this is not the end either. I hope it's a new beginning and new things will happen. Actually, the theme of spacing deserves, I think, a bit more reflection, further reflection. Maybe we could talk about spacing sometime, meet again in one of the journals, in Punto.org journal or the Organizational Statistics journal, and try to think where we can go with that theme even further. Or inclusion in art. Or the other thing, the crafts and art element, because writing is a craft, isn't it? But it can also be an art. Does the one sort of go hand in hand with the other, or doesn't it? I don't know. It's worth exploring from an organizational standpoint, because not just because we are organizational theorists, but I hope that we have something to say in this respect as well, which maybe some of the contributions bore a certain testimony to this. Anyway, to wrap it up, what I think the book, I hope that the book has succeeded in doing is in, well, giving shape to a beginning of a space, a little sort of space to consider whether it can be used for other things and other conversations, and not necessarily in the form of books, but maybe seminars, meetings, maybe special issues of other journals. And I hope that we also have, I mean, the authors contributing have done is, you have mentioned it, the discussant have mentioned it, and I'm really happy that this came up. Given a language to complexity that is not chaotic, it's systematic, it's organized, but it's not simplistic. It's difficult. There are many ideas. No mainstream journal would ever accept anything in this book, and it wouldn't accept the whole complex frame that it sketches, I think. Unfortunately, not yet, but maybe in the future, hopefully. Given all that, the language of the arts and organizational theory and philosophy taken together really, I think, made it possible to talk about complexity in a way that makes sense, maybe even in a way that is practically useful for someone somewhere. And if it does that, then all the more reason to try to extend the space to other conversations. Thank you so very, very much once again. It has been a real pleasure to meet you all here and to listen to your reflections, and hope this will continue.
Well, thank you, Monica. We have to thank you because this journey began with you. So the merit is first of all yours, and I agree that the journey can continue. And I'm personally taking home many ideas, suggestions. So I am very satisfied with this afternoon, what has happened with this afternoon. And again, I have to thank all the participants that animated the discussion, the debate after the presentation of the speakers. And I have to thank also, of course, the speakers. And I think that this is a starting point for other initiatives from whatever, .org or other network. I mean, I don't know if Luigi Maria and Davide wants to say hello to all of us. They are behind the screen.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Monica.
They are the organizers, so we have
Thank you, Guglielmo, for your contribution.
It has been a pleasure being with you this afternoon, and we are very glad that what we were hearing about from you. We also had some entertainments, some of you has received by messages. So we're going to continue and to wish you all the best time, also with a little beer and aperitif and so. And I remember you the Human track on Arts for Business and Society as Bieber. Thank you for having shared it on the chat. They're also going to attach the call on the chat here. I'm going to share with you the track very briefly on the email. And thank you, Guglielmo, of course, for your very important role today.
Next time you have to invite us in Naples and share all the...
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so, sir. I do hope so.
And other stuff. So. Ok.
Ok.
Grazie.
Goodbye.
Ciao, ciao a tutti.
Ciao a
Grazie.
tutti. Ciao.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao a tutti.
Ciao.
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 Dziękujemy. Cześć.